All right, Nick, let's talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals, I'd say down year for the Bengals. You would expect a lot more, especially out of the superstar performance out of Joe Burrow, Chase, Higgins. This offense really was rolling, but I think there's one part of the offense that could maybe have gotten a little bit of help, and that was the offensive line. I think it underperformed some, but this latest hire that the Bengals have made, some kind of knocking it, but others, Bengals legends have come out and supported this hire, and it is going to be great news for the team. Before we get into all that, I'm Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. And as I alluded to, a hire to help the Bengals offensive line. New offensive line coach for the team. I think it's going to be great news for the Bengals, but don't just take it from me. Let's read the report and see who else has come out to support this hire. This, of course, is over from Cincy Jungle. It says, after parting ways with Frank Pollock, the Cincinnati Bengals now have a new offensive line coach. That will be Scott Peters, who previously served as New England Patriots offensive line coach for the 2024 season. His only year in that role, he was previously an assistant offensive line coach with the Cleveland Browns from 2020 to 2023 while working under O-line guru Bill Callahan. The Bengals are certainly taking a chance on a guy with just one full season as the primary offensive line coach, let alone being from a Patriots team that was a mess from top to bottom. But even so, the Bengals' hire of Peters got the stamp of approval from Bengals legend Willie Anderson, arguably the greatest right tackle to ever play in the NFL. This is his tweet. It says, at Bengals, hired a really good O-line coach in Peters. Hashtag Who Day. I think this is a great one. You don't have to take it from me. You hear from Willie Anderson. If he thinks this is a solid offensive line coach, you gotta believe him. His word is gold when it comes to offensive line. Nick, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this one, but before we get to you, Bengals fans, in the comment section below, been a lot of news around the Bengals lately. I think this hire, it was a good one, but we heard from Willie Anderson. I think that's going to signal how everybody votes, but let us know what your thoughts are on this latest offensive line hire. Was it an A? Did they knock it out of the park? Is it a C? There's some questions about it. Are you unsure about this hire? Do you want to see a little bit more? Or is it an F? Do you think it was a bad hire and that Willie Anderson doesn't know what he's talking about? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts on this latest move from the Bengals?
So when I first heard it, I had a reaction very similar to the one you mentioned and the one thing the article brought up about the Patriots being a mess. I'm like, why are the Bengals needing a absolute stud of a coach on the offensive line going to the Patriots, which were literally the opposite of studs up front as an offensive line? They're absolutely atrocious last year in pass blocking and run blocking, teamwork, execution, mental mistakes, penalties. They were a dumpster fire across the board. And yet the Bengals here take their O-line coach and say, we want him to be our O-line coach. When I first heard that, I was like, is Zach Taylor trying to get fired after the 2025 season? But then I take a step back and you hear these reports about Willie Anderson, and you've got another Bengals legend. We were talking about longtime NFL offensive line coach Jim McNally. He was obviously a line coach for the Bengals for a decade and a half in the 80s and 90s. Here's what McNally had to say. Scott Peters will make the Bengals great again. Mark my words, he is a hands-on, smart, updated with the latest techs on pass and run, and will develop young guys to their max. He is the top new line coach in the NFL, way beyond all expectations. All right, look, so I played offensive line in college. We've talked and do a lot of research on this channel, but let's be honest here. You have to rely on people that have been in the trenches, literally in this case, and know what the heck they're talking about. McNally obviously knows more about football, especially offensive line, than I do and probably ever will do. Anderson, one of the all-time greats, knows more about offensive line play than I do and ever will do. So as much as I've got reservations about Peters based on his performance as the O-line coach when he was part of the Patriots organization, I've got to sit here and admit, listen, if you got two studs, two legends coming out and saying Peters is a great O-line coach, I trust them more than my concerns. And with that in mind, the fact that these Bengals legends are blown away by Peters, I think the Bengals may have knocked it apart, knocked it out of the park with this hire.
Yeah, Nick, and I think the key here for me is you hear these guys come out of the woodwork and be like, "Oh, solid hire. Good for the Bengals. Great job. This was a good move. I really like the hire." Say something like laissez-faire, just like kind of a passing comment. No, McNally comes out. First of all, the tweet's in all cap. Whether that means something to you or not as a fan, So he's saying, hands down, smartest guy, has the latest tech. He goes all in. He says he's good at pass, he's good at run. He can develop young guys to the max. He can get the most out of people. The fact that he just comes out and says like every good thing you could, he basically is saying, my career, my expertise as an offensive line guy, I'm laying it out on the line saying this guy, he's the best new coordinator in offensive line play in all of football. That's a pretty bold statement for a guy that respected to come out and say that. You gotta believe that this absolutely has to be a home run for the Bengals. Like they said, the Patriots as a team, top to bottom, were a mess. So if you expect a guy to come in and be able to, deal with all of that, a team going through turmoil, a team having a lot of, just really bad organizational structure from top to bottom, anybody is gonna have a hard time doing good work in that environment. But the Bengals, we've seen it since Katie Blackburn's come in. This team has really been great. So I think the Bengals are working towards great organizational structure, strong offense. They really just need to bump up the offensive line a little bit. I think this sounds like the guy that can do it, and it really seems like a great hire by the Bengals as well. So I'm excited for Bengals fans. I want to see how this works out, but when you have two guys like Willie Anderson and Jim McNally coming out giving major seals of approval, you got to think this was an absolute grand slam hire for the Bengals for the offensive line position.